Welcome to Bat Therapy, mental health through the lens of comics and film. Be a fly on the wall or a bat in the cave, listening in on a friendship built out of a love for talking Batman, comics, and the everyday struggle to achieve mental health and happiness.
We're your hosts, clinical psychologist Dr. Amelia Brown and educator and comic aficionado Keaton Hopkins. Don't forget to follow us on YouTube and social media and find our Patreon at patreon.com/battherapy.
This podcast is about providing education and understanding and is not a replacement for mental health treatment or support. If you're needing help, go to bat-therapy.com for resources.
X-Men.
Okay.
All right. So today I don't really have like a Avengers assessment since it's more of an entity that would coincide next to S.H.I.E.L.D. and Avengers and whatnot. So
but also not within the law in any way. Like at least S.H.I.E.L.D. is financed and backed by the Department of Defense. Same thing with the Avengers. They're financed by S.H.I.E.L.D. or Tony Stark, depending on, right? The
there's a question
X-Men
of
have a blackbird underneath a children's basketball court. Like, they are completely just live by their own rules.
So they definitely, okay. They try and interact. There are so many examples of them interacting with the government, with politics and things. It's just such a huge group. It's so unpredictable. And it really depends on who you're talking to. Okay, so Professor Xavier and his school, they have a jet and they're learning fighting and okay, weird, maybe a little concerning.
Yeah.
But you know, it's not as concerning as, Brotherhood of Mutants, which by the way, come on, what about the sisters over here?
Just one.
Genderqueer or whatever. Yeah, just Brotherhood, whatever.
Yeah, just one, just Mystique.
Yeah, so it's tough with mutants because there's so much variability in who you could be working with if you were the Avengers or S.H.I.E.L.D. or whoever else, especially if you're an outsider. Although, okay. I think one of my main things, who's a mutant versus how do you identify, So
right.
you have the X gene, obviously, that's involved with the powers for the mutants. But you could also be a mutant and identify more with the Avengers,
Right.
So
they go back and forth all the time. And it's my main problem with the MCU because Quicksilver and Scarlet Witch are supposed to be the children of Magneto, and they just completely said nope. And I still have not forgiven them for that. And then they had the audacity to troll us with Quicksilver again in WandaVision. And I'm just like, okay, screw you and your profit margins, Disney. Like, I was so mad when they did that.
MCU, they kind of, they change things up a little bit, but also just in general, it's definitely interesting because if you have powers, you might fit into these different categories. So are you someone who was born with it and it's the X gene? Are you someone who there was some sort of accident? Are you a demigod? There are just all these, so you can't just say, oh, it's someone with powers versus someone who doesn't.
Well, another thing that's interesting about Xavier's Institute is I never see, there's nobody there with lame powers. Like all the kids that are there, it's like they sneeze fire or they punch acid into walls, like whatever it is. Like they're all, I wonder if he accepts students that are like, my hair grows twice as fast. Like, tomorrow my beard will be much bigger. Like, did you get in, or is it like, sorry, these spots are reserved for cool powers only?
You know what? I feel like that hits on the thing that I kept questioning in my brain about what is a mutant, because there's this clear delineation between mutant and non-mutant. But when they say non-mutant, they mean without powers. So how do they see someone like Iron Man? How do they see someone like Thor? How do they see someone like Black Panther? Like it's a
The whole,
very interesting, where do they rank them?
how do they say it in the MCU? Enhanced individuals,
Yeah,
right?
and who's in with you versus out. And I feel like some of that depends on who you are as well. Obviously, some mutants are far more accepting of others.
And it's interesting too, because like the X-Men, a lot of them are specifically mutants that were born
Yeah,
with the gene.
right.
Because Spider-Man is very much a mutant. He was bitten by a spider, his DNA changed. He is
But
a
it's not
mutant.
the X gene, though.
No, but he is a mutant. Right.
Right. So do you only count as a mutant if it's specifically the X gene? So that's my thing here is how many layers are there for acceptance? It kind of, you see that actually though, we just can't help the us versus them thing. We want to fit things in boxes. So I know you and I have talked a lot of times about how the X-Men, it's a representation of a lot of, people of color and all these other things. But generally speaking, like, even within groups that are treated poorly by the majority, you see similar things like this where it's like you said, the people with the lame powers, are they allowed to go to the cool school? Sort of like, there was, well, how dark is your skin? How light is your skin? A lot of times people with lighter skin are treated better than people with darker skin. Or like in the LGBTQ plus community, a lot of times trans groups have a harder time being accepted. Add person of color within those groups tend to have more trouble being accepted. So I feel like those things are actually a really good comparison across.
Hmm.
But yeah, who's a mutant? What counts? Does it only count if it's the X gene? And how does that overlay with incorporating them in with the Avengers? I
Also,
have no idea.
the X-Men are like a Black Ops hit squad. Like they're not like, oh, I feel like whenever we see the X-Men, it is not because a bridge is collapsing and we're here to save the day. Like whenever the X-Men show up, they're showing up to beat the hell out of someone
Yeah.
as a united team. If they have one thing, they have teamwork. And that's one thing I do love about the X-Men. No one versus one fair fights. No. Wolverine, Storm, Rogue, Nightcrawler, Jean Grey, and Cyclops will all unanimously beat the hell out of one person. And I love that for them because they're like, you know what? We're going home after this as a team. Like they're like none of that. No, none of just cut it. We all have superpowers. We all have a giant room that we train in to jump people whenever we need to. And that is exactly what we're going to do. And
And I think that's a really good point
they
is,
have better teamwork than any of these other teams
well,
out
especially if you
there.
compare them to the Avengers.
Oh
So the
yeah.
Avengers, and we're talking MCU. The Avengers, they've had their golden moments, but something really, 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 really big and bad has to happen for them to work well as a team. And well, I guess in fairness, the X-Men, they're always dealing with something really bad because their very reality of them being allowed to live is always
Mhm.
under attack. So I guess they have just gotten really good at teamwork because of that, unfortunately. But yeah, I definitely agree with you that the teamwork tends to be so solid for them. And well, when we were talking in the Avengers episode, I was just, pointing out how unclear it is what they're fighting for in terms of finding a cohesive purpose unless something really big and bad is happening. X-Men, it's easy. It's being a
Easy,
mutant. It's
easy.
it's in the title. So for them, I think that really helps a lot. There's even when there's infighting, they have this really poignant thing in common that a lot of times is life or death.
It kind of reminds me. So with the X-Men, they basically show up if mutants are in danger.
Yep.
And it kind of reminds me of something that, like, I remember my grandma taught to me about it when it came to politics. She was telling me, like, when black people, like, when they did get the right to vote, she said as long as she's been able to vote, it was always one of those things where we're voting for who who is going to hurt us the least. We
Yeah.
don't get to look at things like tax reform
Yeah.
or budget cuts or anything like that. We're basically, as black people in this country, we're voting on who is going to hurt us the least.
God, that's
And that's where the
depressing.
and yeah, and nothing's changed, by the way. But
Yeah.
but also that's what I think is going on with the X-Men, right?
Oh,
The X-Men are
100%.
just like, look, we get that there's lots and lots and lots of problems going on. Our focus is on our people and
And our
making
survival.
sure they're okay
Yeah.
and we survive, right? Like, we know that there's a lot of other terrible stuff going on, but we got to stay focused, which is why I think it's interesting that they are showing up in Avengers Doomsday, because that means that they show up when the entire world is threatened. And I think I'm guessing in the current MCU, they do not exist because I feel like we would have seen them by now. I'm thinking they've been building towards the multiverse
Right.
and not doing it correctly. So I think they're finally going to get it right in Doomsday. Y'all, I know I'm throwing a lot of shade at Disney and the MCU. I promise I'm actually a fan. It's kind of like the parent that knows that a student can be an A student, and so they won't accept B minuses.
You
That's
know they can do better.
I know they can do better, and that's what I expect from them
All
if they're
right. So
gonna
you're
get
hard
my
on
movie
them
theater
because you
money.
want them to live up
Yes. Yes,
to their
exactly.
promise.
Yes, but
That's
I
funny.
promise you all, I love Marvel Comics, and I love the MCU, but I know that they're not reaching their potential.
Yeah, so I mean, that makes a lot of sense to me actually because I've been struggling because with a lot of what we're doing, it's how would this character play into the Avengers and just it's so hard to think of that with the X-Men. And I think you're right that if they were in this multiverse, how could there not have been something popping up already? And some of
Right.
that might just be that they couldn't handle doing all of that. But this would be a really great way of explaining that in a way that could make sense.
Yeah, and I think and it's the same thing with they brought in Spider-Man, but his story is completely different. There's no Norman Osborn or Oscorp or anything like that. The Thunderbolts are a completely different team than what we normally see. There's so many different things, and all of it has to do with basically having the rights to these characters and kind of writing their way around it. And so yeah, it's really interesting the way they've done it, because now that they finally have all of these properties, so like, how are we going to do this? Okay, we're going to just do it multiverse style. And I'm thinking what they're going to end up building towards is one main universe, kind of like what Crisis of Infinite Earths did, where it's like, okay, everybody's not going to make it out of this, but
Yeah.
the ones that do are all going to be right here. And so I think that's what they're building towards. And I'm excited for it because I'm like, all right, potentially this could be great. Unless they're bringing the X-Men back just to kill them, just like that. And then
Yeah. Well, they're
there will
not going
be
to
a
go
podcast
quietly.
episode about that.
You will hear from us
I
about.
will have something to say because the
Well,
X-Men are my favorite.
yeah. Well, I think that's definitely an intriguing idea where okay, so let's look at how when things go awry with the multiverses, some of the worlds literally will die off. They can't all survive. And especially if you pull the X-Men in cuz what you were literally talking about before was they are literally about survival. Some of the Avengers have gotten to that point. Like I think you could argue Thor, for example, got to that
Yeah.
point because of
Oh
his
yeah.
world
Poor
getting
Thor.
decimated. But he
Sheesh.
lived so many years with something different. Where with the X-Men, it's okay. I guess technically the X gene doesn't happen until puberty, blah, 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 blah. But that aside, it's essentially their entire lives that it's all about survival, and their world is about to go up and, disappear, get destroyed. Yeah, I could see that being they're not gonna go so gently, shall we
And they
say.
do a lot of retconning in X-Men because, yeah, at one point it's like, oh, it kicks in at puberty. But in those first movies, you definitely see elementary and middle schoolers at that
Yeah, that's
school
true.
running around. There's also a huge plot line in it that as a someone with a background in genetics, I cannot get past. In X-Men 2, there's a line in there about how the X gene is located on the Y chromosome because Bobby Drake's mom blames herself for him being a mutant. And then I can't remember who it was. I think it might be Pyro's like, actually, it's on
He
the
does
Y
say that.
chromosome, so it's his fault. And I'm like, okay, that's BS because if it's on the Y chromosome, that means there would only be male
Only be
mutants.
men. Yeah. Yeah, he
Irks
says
me.
it's passed down from the father.
Right. And if it was on the father's X chromosome, then that means anyone could pass it. It wouldn't be necessarily
Right,
passed down from the father.
right.
And so I am bothered by that because I'm like, oh, what a great uneducated line. But this is what I do love about the X-Men because of course comic books have always been rooted in a reflection of current society. And I feel like so many different people can relate to the X-Men because they are a people that are out of place. A lot of them are judged based on their looks, and a lot of them aren't. A lot of them are. And it's funny because if you look at those first X-Men movies, it's like, who are the mutants? Find the best looking people in this room and they are the mutants. Like Famke Jensen, James Marston, and Halle Berry
Yeah.
and Hugh Jackman. It's like
Ridiculously good-looking people. Yeah.
they're the
You know,
mutants.
you actually,
I bet
though,
they are.
you were actually hitting on another thing where they actually show this layer in some of the movies where, yeah, some of them are judged by their looks and even judged by other mutants. So I really actually find it interesting the different layers of different mutants. So some mutants cannot hide, or they can choose they're trying to hide, and then
Hmm.
other mutants are judging them for hiding, even though, let's just say, the persecution would be a lot more intense
Hmm.
if you're blue, for example.
Right. Like
There's
Nightcrawler
no
or
hiding you're a
Mystique or
mutant there.
Beast. Right.
Right.
And that's one thing they
So,
even do in
yep.
X-Men Evolution. They give Nightcrawler like this holographic thing to make him
Yeah,
look like a regular person.
exactly. So in some ways, and now I'll hand it to Magneto. I think Magneto is very harshly anti anyone who's not a mutant. But if you're a mutant, it doesn't matter. And he's probably one of the most accepting when it comes to visually looking different because he's
Hmm.
so pro mutant.
Hmm.
Where you have other people who are pro mutant that seem really great, but if you pay close attention, they're actually telling you to hide in certain ways. And so
Professor
that
X
really gets
does it a
picked.
bit with
Exactly.
Mystique in those
Yep.
prequel movies. Yeah.
Exactly.
I don't like it. Yeah.
Yeah, and he has Xavier actually has to learn to be more open to all mutants. So, I think just like you were saying with the looks, that is a really great example of how there are these different layers. And then you have other mutants where their powers are almost a disability in a way. So Rogue, for
Hmm.
example, she can't touch anything with her own skin. I mean, so I've been having really dry skin, and so I've been wearing a rubber glove a lot of times when I'm doing any sort of chores and stuff.
Hmm.
And I gotta tell you, it's weird to go around doing things without being able to feel what's going on. And Rogue has to do
Yeah.
that all the time,
Yeah.
and she can't kiss her boyfriend. And so people are judging her. I think it's Wolverine who I'm realizing Wolverine in those first few movies is actually really irritating. He's super gross around Jean. He acts like he's the love of her life for some reason. Anyway. So I think it's him that's like, don't get the cure for mutantism just because of a boy. I was like, that's easy for you to say. You can have sex with someone and not have like a human-sized condom on you.
Right.
Or, you can feel someone's touch, and so there are some mutants where there's some mutants where it's actually they're having to adjust how they interact in the world in a way that you see with disability type stuff.
Yeah. And it's fine, but oh my God. And that just reminds me, there's so much I want to see done right with
But yeah,
the
like what?
X-Men now that they're in the MCU. Because
Tell me.
Rogue, one, she knows she in the X-Men lore, she can fly and she has super strength. And that is a power that never goes away. She always has it because guess who she touched? Carol Danvers, Captain Marvel, and put her into a coma for a bit, but also took those powers and she has those permanently just because of Carol Danvers' background. And so I'm like, yeah, there's so much that I want to see done well. And so they're bringing them in here. And it's what's really interesting too is the lore because X-Men is one of the only universes that are going to be showing up here that already has multiple timelines because we have like the regular X-Men universe that goes all the way through the last stand. And then you have the X-Men movies where there are sequels to that where they go back in time and shift things.
Yep.
And
Where
because
they
of them
fix X-Men
shifting
3.
things, right, you have the new modern timeline where everyone is back and alive at the end of Days of Future Past, but then they go back in time again in the 80s and the 90s to show how those characters got from there to here.
Mhm.
And you still also have the other alternate timeline with um where Logan takes place
Right, yeah.
in
Dude, I
in the
totally
future.
forgot they did Logan as a movie.
Yeah, where Old Man Logan takes place, and
Mhm.
then now you have whatever universe that has Deadpool in it as well,
Yep.
and
Mhm.
yeah, and so I'm really interested in seeing what they do with these characters because we've seen. I mean, Cyclops died in that third movie, but then he showed back up in Days of Future Past, and we don't know what Professor X has been up to, and so I'm really interested in seeing the role that they play in
Yeah,
this because depending on what timeline they're coming from, we could see a very different team. We could see a
true.
very cynical, grizzled team. We could see a team where it's like, we're going to get the job done. Hoorah. Like, because all the X-Men have trauma. But the thing that I love about them is when they come together as a team and they basically the X Mansion is almost like a commune where everyone there can depend on each other. Everyone there is like, okay, we get along, we work together as a team. And when you get old enough, you get to be a child soldier in the X Men, right? Like that's
When
just
you get
their
old enough,
system.
but don't worry, not too old.
But don't worry, because for now, all of the current child soldiers that are adults are now the teachers at the school. It's a cycling
Okay.
system. It really does work. It
Well,
really works. It really does work well. It's like, yeah, yeah. And so it's I really love though how they have this setup where all of these kids, some of them are runaways, some of them
yeah.
the parents just cast out, some of them the parents actually really care about them and want what's best for them, so they send them here. And some of the parents are just like, oh, I thought you were just on scholarship at a big fancy school. I had no idea that you were made of ice. And all of them have very different backgrounds, but they all have something very much in common that gives them camaraderie with everyone one there.
Yeah. So I think my concern is that there's so many different characters and things going on in these movies. And it's an Avengers movie, so obviously the Avengers are gonna have a solid place in the forefront with this. And then I'm
Maybe.
assuming Fantastic Four is gonna have a big stake, and so there's just so much that's gonna be going on. I'm concerned that they just have a cameo, which is fine. Honestly, I feel like the X-Men does best if you can focus in on the X-Men,
You know,
but I don't know.
maybe, maybe, but I feel like they would not give them their own trailer for them to just show up for 5 minutes. And also though, who are the Avengers right now?
Yeah.
Like the movie's called Avengers Doomsday, but who are the Avengers? Okay, like Thor's alive, Captain America's alive. I'm not sure where Captain Marvel is right now. They did away with
Yeah,
both
so
Pietro and uh
yeah.
the new Avengers are the Thunderbolts, and they're composed of basically war criminals that are doing good now. They're the Suicide Squad without the bombs in their head, more or less. Spider-Man's out there somewhere. Like there's a
It's
lot
definitely a
going
tough
on.
question to say who are the
Right,
Avengers
right.
even to start with,
Who
which
are
is
the
fair. Yeah.
who's their roster? Because they don't have a headquarters. Tony Stark's dead. Like there's
Yeah.
yeah, that's the
I mean,
thing.
I guess that's true because when I think Avengers movie, I think
It's
you
called
had
Avengers
that
in Spirit.
main cast, the
Yeah,
Avengers experience.
it's called
But yeah,
Avengers in
if
Spirit. Like
the
yeah,
Avengers is more of a struggle and, not really as fully formed, maybe it'll leave some more space for a more fully formed team like X-Men to have a stake in the movie.
and that's what I'm wondering because in a lot of storylines, all of these superhero teams, you end up having mutants. Now, with the X Men are one of those few teams where they have lots of different teams of mutants around the world. Like they have like Alpha Flight and X Force and so they have lots of different teams that are around that are composed of mutants, but at the same time, there's mutants that show up or become part of the Avengers, or they temporarily team up with the Fantastic Four, who are technically mutants because their DNA was mutated, right? If you're going
Right. They're just not X gene
right,
mutants.
right. And so it's I really think it's going to be interesting to see what they do because I'm wondering if this is going to basically be like everyone that shows up that we've seen trailers for, if they're part of a team, some of that team is going to get wiped out, and whoever's left is going to be the new Avengers, right?
That has what if vibes to it.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
I
the
think I
the
think that.
animated series.
Yeah, it's like yeah, and so I'm here for it. I'm down to see Stephen Strange and Cyclops fighting together
I was about
after.
to
Yeah,
say, I'm open to that. I'm
yeah,
open to that. Especially if you're talking about crossing over of different multiverses and yeah, some what if vibes with that
yeah,
for sure.
yeah. Because
Interesting.
yeah, and so I'm really interested in seeing it because, like I said, the X Men are the only team and the only characters out there where I feel like you don't have to convince them to fight as a team. That is their whole
True.
thing. They
Yeah.
that teamwork is makes the dream work is it's spray painted across the X mansion. Like that is what
Depending which Wolverine you get, sometimes he's on
they
board,
do.
sometimes he's not.
But like, yeah, Wolverine in X-Men 1 isn't on board. After that, he's just a character actor. It's like, we know you're part of the team. Just okay. Okay, yeah, I know. You're mad because Jean Grey's married. Like, what? Like, but yeah, I do love that. And the thing is, too, one thing that makes these movies very interesting also is they always find a way to not make Professor X overpowered because he is so overpowered,
Yeah.
right?
I
Like,
feel the
it's
same with
always
Storm.
like it's always yeah, oh yes, yes. Like this, yeah, oh man. Don't even yeah, because Storm is an S level mutant. Like she is like beyond. Like
Yeah.
the woman can make hurricanes with a wave of her hand. Like literally. Literally, like she's right there. As far as how powerful she is, she's right there near Magneto with some of the stuff that she can do. Same thing, Bobby Drake. Once Bobby Drake learns to like really use his powers, he can manipulate water on a molecular level. And
Yeah.
so, he can, he's some of these characters are just absolutely powerful, right?
Yeah.
Um,
Which once
and
again, I think leads to them being in a different multiverse from all the other stuff Avengers has had going on makes a lot of sense.
yeah, because I mean, think about when everybody was like, "Oh no, Sokovia is gonna crash into Earth," and Magneto's like, "No, it's not." Like, then that's just it, and the move just
Yeah.
roll credits.
Yeah.
That's the movie.
Yeah, he's like, "What metals are in the ground?" Perfect.
Right, right. Oh, Ultron, what are you made of? What was that? Like, yeah, it's like, yeah, same thing. Like Iron Man. I'm gonna go fight Magneto, which you think is laughable until you think about the fact that every single X-Men movie, Wolverine still tries to fight Magneto.
I know it is. And
He
every
never
time he's just
learns.
kind of like, "Ah, little pawn."
He never learns. Every single time he's like, I'm gonna go fight Magneto. And then all of a sudden it's like, my metal bones. Like, what's
So
happening?
yeah, okay. So let's see here. So Iron Man's obviously screwed.
Yeah,
Thor screwed.
yeah.
Black
Maybe,
Panther, you
maybe.
think like alien metal doesn't count?
I don't think he needs the metal to fight Magneto, technically.
Yeah, but I mean, like, if he didn't have his axe or his hammer, he's gonna not be at. Well, I guess
New
he's still
Thor's
got
built
some like.
different.
Okay, okay.
He's
They'll
tough.
they'll
Yeah.
be more evenly matched with that. So Black Panther's screwed.
Yeah, if he can manipulate vibranium, that's not really gonna do
Yeah.
much, right?
So as long as if he can still manipulate with vibranium,
Yeah,
Captain America's screwed.
yeah. Hulk is
Uh,
normally the only one that's a
okay.
problem for anyone. When
Yeah.
Hulk is done right, he's a problem for everybody in the Marvel universe because if he really gets pissed off, it's like, well, just give him that continent until he calms down. Like it's one
Yeah.
of those things. But yeah, he's so powerful, and so I'm really interested in seeing what they do with him because I mean, the reason he wears that helmet is because pretty much the only one that can stop Magneto is Professor X. And and so I'm really excited to see them because also another thing that I love is the main characters that the X-Men fight are other mutants, normally the Brotherhood, and
Mm.
they're fighting against Magneto. But it's such an interesting relationship because they also don't want to they fight each other, but they do not want to kill each other. Right? Like they are like we are like Professor X and Magneto have had each other dead to rights. And it's one of those things like, I'm not gonna kill you. Like I just
Actually,
yeah.
one of the things that I think is really neat that they do so well in the movies is showing how this like complicated intertwined relationship that they have
Mhm.
where they very much are in conflict with each other and yet have such great respect for each other. There's one point where I think Pyro makes some comment about Xavier and he gets immediately shut down. Like,
Yeah.
you can't, you're not allowed to even go there. It's such a wonderful, complicated connection that they have.
Mhm.
And they're able to span so many different movies so well with that.
Yeah.
It's, I think, one of my favorite things about the X-Men movies.
And I love that, like, even like, yeah, but I think you're talking about X-Men 3 when Pyro makes the comment about after they kill off Professor X. And I think Magneto's like, Charles Xavier did more
Yes.
for mutants than you could possibly imagine. Like,
Yep. Like, he
yeah.
was genuinely upset, even though they've been in conflict with each other for years, so
Mhm.
genuinely upset.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then later on, you see them in X-Men Days of Future Past, which they never really they never really explained how Professor X was back in that
Nope,
because it's still
never
post
did.
yeah. It's fine.
I
It's
didn't put
fine.
that
I
together.
also pretend it didn't happen.
So I actually it's funny you say that. I did not put that together until this time because as you know, I hate X-Men 3 because I'm human. And
Excellent. Love
so
that for you.
I don't know if I've watched X-Men 3 since we saw it in the movie theater when we we were in what, high school. And so in preparing for today, I watched all of them. And so I watched X-Men 3 and then I immediately watched the Days of Future Past afterwards. And yeah, they don't explain how he gets from putting his mind into random comatose dude's body to
Yeah.
there. Now a lot of time
And I
has
look like Patrick
passed,
Stewart. Yeah.
and he still looks like Patrick Stewart, yeah. I mean, come on, we had to have some Patrick Stewart, but yeah, that's the only gap, but honestly, you fixed X-Men 3, I'm willing to ignore that gap. I mean, let's be real, there's much larger gaps going on in the MCU,
Do
so
love that X-Men 3 still did it better than Wonder Woman 84, where it's like, hey, this is a completely comatose individual that's been that way, and he's technically brain dead. We just have him on a ventilator. And Professor X is like, I'll take his mind. Unlike Wonder Woman 84, and it's like, oh, I'm just a dude at a bookstore, and now he's my boyfriend. Like, it's like, wow. Like, okay,
yeah,
X-Men The
let's
Last Stand knew how to handle that. Like,
oh, 1984 got so many things wrong. Yeah.
but yeah, I'm really excited to see what happens with these characters because in the trailer with the X-Men, it gets intense. And I'm really excited because I feel like Cyclops has never gotten his roses for being a good leader of the X-Men. And I feel like they finally started doing it in X-Men 97, the
Mm.
new animated series that like
I
is a
still need to watch
continuation.
that.
Cyclops is finally like shown to be a very good leader and also a huge badass. And so I was really happy to see that. And it really does look like they are kind of showing that in the trailer that we see. You get to see him doing something pretty epic. And so yeah, it's gosh, I do love the mystery of it all, like not knowing how everything is gonna go. But also Patrick Stewart and Ian McKellen are back as Professor
Yep.
X and Magneto. And so,
So we know their versions at the very least are gonna be
yeah. And
there.
speaking
Yeah.
and speaking of teamwork, also, the X-Men and the Brotherhood have no problem working together when it comes to, hey, mutants are in trouble. And they have very different views because Magneto's like, I hit once and never have to hit again. And Professor X is like, let's
Yeah,
show
so
them
Professor
mercy.
X essentially appears less powerful because he's having to spend 50% of his energy keeping Magneto from killing anybody.
Yeah, but it's also what makes their dynamic so interesting is their backstory. Professor X was a rich kid in England. Like Eric, Magneto is a Holocaust survivor, right? One of my lines is in one of the X-Men movies. Someone says, hey, I'm just a guy taking orders. And Magneto's like, I've been at the mercy of people just following orders. And it's like, oof, I got like chills when he said that because it's like, oh man, like, yeah, that is not an excuse because Magneto's one of those people like, look, it's one thing to just say, like, I'm a product of my environment. But if there's anyone in that environment that knows it's wrong, you don't get to make that excuse, right? Like, it's like, no, not buying it, not for a second.
And so that's the thing where you have some X-Men who or you have some mutants who haven't faced as much of the ugliness of others. And Eric who I mean, he embraces his mutantism to the point where it's, what's your real name? Which, once there's very interesting things where I was just relating some stuff to LGBTQ stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And so even coming up with a new name, which comes up, say,
They
being
right.
transgender and all this stuff. He's such a wonderful character because he does all these things that most of us aren't okay with, but it comes from a place that we are okay with. And it's
You
such
get it.
a
You get it. Right.
it's so alluring,
Mhm.
and you don't know what to do with it. You're put in the place of Charles Xavier in a lot of ways, or I don't know, there's just this draw because of their two dynamics to try and figure out where you fit in the world of mutants. And I think that's really cool. And I loved seeing in the teaser that they're hanging out together. And so really seeing them at this next stage.
One thing they do really interesting with Magneto in the X-Men movies, especially once they bring in Michael Fassbender as a younger
Yeah.
Magneto, one thing they do really interesting is show that he tries to do it Charles' way. He does. He tries to do it Charles's way. Like, all right, let's show them peace. All right, let's make sure not to kill anyone. All right, let's do that. And every single time, humans take it way too far. And he's like, all right, here we go again. Especially in X-Men Apocalypse, when he is just in, I think, Poland. I think he's in Poland and he has a wife and child.
Yeah.
And then they get murdered again. Like, and he's just, and he has to do, well, that I'm saying they don't get murdered again, but he basically loses his family
Yeah.
again,
Again.
all because of him being a mutant or it being
Yeah.
based around that and who he is. And at one point, he's just screaming like, "Is this who I am? Is this just who I'm supposed to be? Just this killer? Fine." Like he's just like, "Fine." And so I do love that they show him as this very dynamic character that has tried to do it that way, and he's at this point where he's like, never again. No more trusting humans, no more trusting humanity. He's gone full cynical when it comes to humans.
Yeah.
And like you said, we've seen it happen and we understand why, because we've
Yep.
all been in a cynical place.
Yep.
We've
And I
all
think
been in that place.
Ian McKellen's version, especially so before they did the Fassbender ones later, when they first started, they made Magneto a cleaner villain. So more of a I'm against humans. I'm also willing to sacrifice other mutants in my own best interest. Like he's like, oh, let me put Rogue into this thing that will kill her instead of me getting killed, as an example. I think there are some things that gave you less of that at the start, but the more that they've built into the X-Men, I think the better they got with and the animated series did well with it too, but just
Mhm.
showing that complicated nature of his in these movies, I think has improved over time. And yeah, it's just so compelling to it's just such a great way of showing that people are not purely good, purely bad. They're these really complicated combinations of all of these things. And I think he's a great example of be careful of judging each other because even something that feels black and white to judge is usually not that easy.
And once again, a product of trauma, right? From the moment that he was trying made to use his powers with his mom at gunpoint, right? Like from when he pulled that fence, like trying to get back to his family, it's just been one thing after another, one fight after another. Meanwhile, Xavier, not as much. Why? Because that's his power.
Yeah.
He doesn't need them to have something metal to stop them.
Well, and I think the important thing with Magneto too is just to clarify where yes, there's a lot of trauma that happened for him and it's part of how he looks at things the way he does. But I would say that he doesn't see himself as necessarily the product of trauma or reacting through trauma, but more he's a very thoughtful, methodical person and he has looked at he's chosen how to respond to that trauma
Mhm.
very purposefully. And he also recognizes that certain things Charles is never going to understand because he has not lived through that same trauma.
Love the X-Men. They are my absolute favorite, and I'm so happy to see them finally
Fingers
back.
crossed. Fingers crossed.
Fingers crossed, knock on wood.
Salt over the shoulder. I don't know.
What is it? 10 Hail Marys or something? I don't know. Or is it, I think either 7 or 12, right? Those are the Bible's favorites.
There you go. There you go.
Thanks for nerding out with us. I'm clinical psychologist Dr. Amelia Brown.
And I'm educator and comic aficionado Keaton Hopkins. Check out my TV and movie reviews on YouTube at Team JBS. Check out our website at bat-therapy.com, our Bat Therapy YouTube channel, and follow us on social media. And don't forget our Patreon page at patreon.com/battherapy. See you next week. Same bat time, same bat channel.